All right, well, it's 3 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. So, hi everyone, welcome to our September webinar, AAC Partner Training with Vicki and Nicole. We are super excited to have you all back from your presentation at Kate, and I will hand it over to you all.
Okay, so hi guys. I'm really glad to see you here. I'm impressed. We have quite a few people joining us today. So what we're talking about today is partner training. I think the reason that we really wanted to work on this is I think Nicole and her previous position, and probably you're seeing it as well in your newer position. And certainly we work in our clinic and schools. We're seeing that almost more important than the training that we do with our students who are using AAC is the training that we provide to all the people that are around that student so that they're able to model on the communication devices and create an environment that speaks AAC. So that's really why we wanted to talk about it. But training adults, just like training students, um, can be very different depending on who you're talking to. And so there's a lot of different ways you can go about training, and some of them are much more effective than others. And so we wanted to just break down some of the different types of training that we're doing and maybe give you some ideas and hopefully hear from you all about ideas for adult education that are working for you too. I'm Vicki Clark. I'm a speech language pathologist by training, but I've been working in the AAC world and special education world now for 30 years. I have a clinic called Dynamic Therapy Associates, but part of our practice is also the DTA Schools program. That program is where we have ongoing contracts. With multiple school districts around the state of Georgia, Virginia, and we've had contracts out in Texas as well. So we're around a little bit. But I like to think about the services that we provide as wraparound AAC services. So what we're doing is we are helping with families in our clinic, and in the schools, we are doing individual evaluations and helping students acquire equipment and doing initial customization with communication devices. We help with the funding before they come in. We help with funding. And then we also do implementation planning and technical training with the families and the school teams. And we also do district-wide training. So we have these trainings, large group, small group, in different ways with all of the special education, primarily the self-contained classrooms in our school districts. And this is my friend Nicole, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nicole Palumbo. So as Vicki mentioned, I'm now working for PRC Saltillo. But my previous life, I worked at a small private school, and that's where I met Vicki. So I met Vicki because she was doing all the things she just described for this small private school. So we connected and we started talking about how we could work together to help our communication partners in the school. So I'm going to be talking about how we implemented this training protocol in that particular school. And in that school, every kid had a one-to-one. So I quickly realized as I was kind of getting my footing that it became really important to train these built-in communication partners because they're with them all day long. I am doing direct therapy, I'm consulting, but these one-to-one interveners that were with them all day were truly their communication partners throughout the entire sequence of the day. So I thought, okay, I'm one small piece, but they're a really big piece of the puzzle. So we kind of went through how we could teach them so they could teach their students. Okay, so for learning objectives, we're hoping that by the time you guys are done with us, that you'll be able to define BICS and CALP. You'll be able to identify 4 or more AAC partner strategies, and you'll identify components of a plan to train adult partners to encourage their students to use their AAC tools. And just so you know, because this is an intermediate level session, we sort of are making the assumption you know and are familiar with the AAC concepts and strategies. So we're not going to go super in depth on those things so that we can talk about the training protocol, but there are references at the end of this PowerPoint, and you can use those to investigate further or ask questions at the end.
Okay, so we wanted to introduce a framework that we use in teaching AAC to our students. So this is a framework that really is embedded throughout all of our materials and all of our trainings. And basically, it is a step-by-step process for moving from the identification that a child needs some augmentative communication solutions through the assessment and then moving them to a point of being able to communicate autonomously or to say whatever they want to say, whenever they want to say it, to whoever they want to say it to. So those steps include the first step is the trials. So we're looking at the students' current forms and functions of communication, so their mode of communication right now, whether it's behavioral or some of our students that we use AAC with are actually speaking, but maybe not meeting their needs across environments, and the purposes. So are they communicating to request? Are they communicating to share information? Are they communicating effectively to protest and escape? And then looking at potential solutions for that. Once we choose a solution, our second step is choosing what we're going to be targeting. So what are our goals going to be for this particular student? We talk about from there training the students, and training really is looking at how you access your communication device to get to your words. Take in that fourth step is our partners modeling for us. Step 5 is where we're starting to, as partners, we're giving our students opportunities to communicate. And step 6 is where we hopefully get to where our students are able to communicate independently.
Okay, so we're going to break down those steps a little bit. So step 1, trials. And this is, we use these tools to help gather some data. The AAC skills assessment, the communication matrix, and communication sampling and analysis. And what we were trying to do is just get a baseline and paint a picture of their current skill level so we could use that to kind of plan ahead.
This second step, we're looking at choosing targets for our communication instruction for our students. The reason that I think this is super important is I think it's very easy to follow along with the current trends in AAC and choose targets based on what everybody's talking about. So for a while, when I first started back in the Stone Age, everybody had activity boards for everything. So there was just a board for breakfast and a board for book reading and a board to go to McDonald's, until there was hundreds and hundreds of boards, which we soon realized was ridiculous and didn't work very well. And at this point now, I think core vocabulary is the hot topic, and everybody knows that we should be teaching core vocabulary. But what I find is that we tend to jump to that, and we don't really necessarily think through for each individual student, where is the starting place? What do we need them to be able to communicate? So the strategy that we use for determining targets for communication, the first thing that we do is we ask the AAC user themselves. And by ask, I may mean ask verbally and expect some kind of an answer, but I also might mean just observing them, right? And getting a feel for what they like. We're going to ask their family, their friends, their helpers, their interveners, in Nicole's case with the school that she was working at, and any other relevant partner for lists of favorite people, places, topics, foods. We want to know what really gets that kiddo excited. Those are going to be targets that are really, really important, in particular for our emergent communicators. The second thing that we do is we observe. So we watch the AAC user in their typical environments. We consider the demands of that environment. We watch their bodies to think about what they're already saying non-symbolically. So with facial expression or behaviors, gestures, those are going to be some of our initial targets because the student already wants to communicate those. And finally, we consider frequency. That's going to capture our core vocabulary, and research and developmental norms for vocabulary, language, and pragmatic development.
So step 3, training the target word. So step 3 is really going to be on training it out of context. And we're just learning the skill. So we're training where the word lives and how to say it. So I will talk a little bit more about how we did this in the school setting later in the presentation. But what I want you to notice on this slide is that some of the instructions are for the communication partner, so you see up there, and some are for the student. You're sort of doing it at the same time, but the instructions are specific to student versus the partner. So remember, we're just in the teaching phase. So you're focusing on where the word lives in the device, how to produce it. And then the student is sort of passively learning and seeing the word in action as the partner's learning how to model that word. And then the partner gets to practice. And then if the student wants to practice, they can too, but it's all sort of just in fun. We're just learning where the word lives.
Our fourth step is we call it take in. And that's where we are expecting the adults to be communicating using the AAC system. We're trying to immerse our students in an environment that speaks AAC. So we're teaching the adults how to use the device, how to find the words, and how to incorporate the use of the device into the daily activities. So they're thinking about how to begin to use this kind of new language system for themselves. It's pretty formidable. I think you'll hear people talk about you should be modeling all day, every day. And the truth is, when you come into classrooms and you say that to teachers, that is very, very intimidating. So we have to think carefully about and intentionally about how we help them learn to speak AAC.
So step 5 is going to be try it. So we talked about step 3 being out of context. Now we're going to put it into real context. So it's encouraging the students to begin to communicate using their AAC method and offering a lot of support. Now we're putting it into real context, but this is where partner strategies are going to come into play because it's really important that they're delivering it the right way. So there are different formats for partner strategies, and we'll talk about some of those today. And then you're probably familiar with some that have already been developed, such as s'mores and master CALP.
Our last step, this is the step we're going for, is talk. This is where we're expecting our students now to have been immersed in an environment that speaks AAC, to have been encouraged to use their communication systems to participate and request and protest and share information and comment. And we expect this to be now embedded as an expectation throughout the school day. So this is now when the device truly should be out all day, every day, or the communication book, or the AAC solution. As we're thinking about the topics that we want to train our partners on, and this is really what we're getting to today, is this partner training. These are some of those topics that we tend to address. So we'll address how to train a specific word or a message. So we actually go in our world, we call that technical training. Our SLP assistant, Barbara Delapiano, runs out to the classes and she meets with the teachers and the families, and she shows them basically how the device is organized, how the vocabulary is structured. We come in after that and we start talking about partner strategies. So we're talking about things like what is aided language input, and what is engagement and the role of engagement as we're teaching our students. We can't just be dryly teaching information to them. We need to be engaging for them, having the devices out and available all of the time, respecting what the child is saying with their bodies and reflecting that on their communication device. So we're going to get into a lot more of those details later. We do training topics around how to assess communication. We talk about what AAC competencies in schools looks like. What does our student need to be able to do? We share resources and materials that support communication. So sometimes at first our teachers just need to walk away from a training session with a core vocabulary book that they know how to use with their students, and use shared reading with their core communication board. So it can be that simplistic at first for people. You have to give them little baby wins so they're willing to keep going with us. We'll talk about communication-focused lesson planning, and then how to embed communication into daily routine. So those are just some of the topics that we address. Okay, so as we think about choosing these targets, and I warned you, this is a hot topic for me. I think it's really important how we pick those targets for our students. I want to take just a minute to talk about BICS and CALP. And that's one of our hopes, that you guys will come away today with if you haven't used that term before or heard it, a better understanding of it. So this is something that we learned from second language learning theory. So Jim Cummins developed the concept of BICS and CALP a long time ago. I don't know when. But basically what he was saying is that as a person is learning a second language, they have to learn basic interpersonal communication skills first before we can expect them to communicate about cognitive academic to have cognitive academic language proficiency. So to be able to talk about what they're learning. If you think about what we know about, you've all heard that that little explanation of how we teach reading, that we spend kindergarten through second grade, we're learning to read, and then third and on, we are now reading to learn. Well, communication is kind of the same thing. First, we have to learn to communicate for our own personal reasons, things that we're motivated by, things that impact our life. And then we can take that ability and we can apply it to teaching, to learning academics. So I think this is really important, because a lot of times when kiddos get their devices and it goes into the classroom, the first thing that people target are colors, days of the week, months of the year. You know what I'm talking about, right? Morning meeting. That's an easy place. It's structured. The kids are used to doing it. But then the targets that we're addressing are not those basic interpersonal communication skills, right? They're not exactly academic skills, but they're heading that direction. The thing that's important to know, that in second language learning theory, BICS, this basic interpersonal communication skills, this can take 6 months to 2 years of being immersed in an environment that speaks your language. So immersed in a classroom that speaks AAC for 6 months to 2 years, just communicating social information, before we can start expecting them to communicate in order to participate in our standards-based instruction or any instruction that we're teaching them. These are just really brief examples of what falls under BICS and what falls under CALP. So BICS is going to be cognitively undemanding language. It's easy to understand. It deals with everyday language and occurrences, and it uses simple language structure. So these are going to be asking for things that you want, being able to engage in social greetings, being able to share some basic comments and opinions. I like it, I don't like it. And then our language development. So building those single words, and then building, being able to manipulate those into phrases and ultimately be able to converse. Cognitive academic language, that's where we're getting into higher level language development and academic access.
Okay, so when we started talking about at my small school, what targets were we going to pick? We quickly realized that we need communication partner buy-in. And we thought core vocabulary is a really big concept, because of course, right when we started, me and Vicki were like, all right, let's think about what core vocabulary words we're going to introduce. And the more we started talking about it, we were like, it's a really big concept that takes SLPs quite some time to understand. So we thought introducing it right out of the gate might be a bit too much. So we went back to the BICS and CALP, which, full disclosure, I'd never heard of before I met Vicki. And we kind of looked at the research and we thought maybe starting with more social messages, using that research might be a little more digestible for our staff. We felt like we might get a little more buy-in if we start with things that kind of happen naturally throughout their day. So we thought we would break it down into categories. So we picked greetings, needs, quick chats, and feelings. And we thought that would cover kind of the majority of social messages that they were using throughout their school day. So by introducing social messages first, it allowed the staff to get comfortable with the protocol format, and it got them putting hands on the device. And I think what I saw for them was it felt really easy for them to incorporate through their day. It was great. Like, I heard greetings galore. I started right off the bat with greetings because I was like, they happen every day, all day. That's where I'm going to start. I heard them everywhere. It was fantastic. So people started to feel this success because it was naturally built into their day. We weren't asking them to add one more thing to their plate. And, I think about, I pass my colleagues and I always say hi, right? It's like kind of awkward if you don't. So I always give them a wave, or I say, hi, what's up? And we do that hundreds of times throughout the whole day. Well, so did the students. Kids were coming in and out of the classroom. Teachers were popping in and out. So they had all of these opportunities. And I really tried to stress to them, it's not just at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, right? We naturally say hello to people when we're sitting down next to them for lunch. Like, there's so many opportunities. But I think the big takeaway for me there was that we didn't have to schedule it in. It just sort of happened. So after we went through our 4 social areas, we introduced core vocabulary. And we looked at high frequency words, considered communicative intent, academic instruction, and we looked at their daily schedule because we wanted to really pick targets that were going to be beneficial and functional to them.
Okay, so thinking about training partner strategies now. Um, some of the examples of partner strategies that we addressed are modeling AAC, so aid language input. Expectant pause is a huge one. Waiting for someone, giving people the space to communicate and the opportunities. Descriptive teaching, describing what's happening using our devices. Respect and reflecting natural communication, engagement, I mentioned earlier, using open-ended questions instead of yes-no questions all day. We hear lots and lots of yes-no questions for our kids. And then repetition with variety. So we are greeting people, we're saying hi throughout the day in different places, and with different partners, and maybe using different types of messages to greet someone. In our DTA Schools program, we have partner strategy kits that we use to introduce these strategies. So there are things like they have posters, and then they have little videos that we show the students. Subsequent to the last time that we presented this, we've actually developed this out more into a scripted set of materials that we actually teach the teams. We will hang these posters around the schools so that it's a reminder for the teachers and the paraprofessionals of some of the strategies they can use. One of the things that I think is the hardest about teaching partner strategies is people remembering to do it. And even for myself, when I first started really looking at the concept of partner strategies, I had to remind myself and set little goals for myself. Okay, this week I'm going to really focus on descriptive teaching, or I'm going to focus on giving it enough expectant wait time. So I gave myself little challenges, and you'll see that that's been embedded into the programming that we created around this. Other partner strategies, other than what DTA Schools does, we did not reinvent a wheel here. There's a lot of people that are talking about partner strategies and a lot of fantastic resources out of there. These are three things that I think are really wonderful. Center and Bob has been talking partner strategies for years. They are fantastic, and you can look that up under the acronym SMORES. Model as a Master Pal is a set of materials, a pretty massive set of materials that Tabby Wilbur Jones did, that you can access on Practical AAC. Fantastic. And then Rachel Langley has weighed in on this as well recently, and she introduced a revisit to the AAC prompting hierarchy that I thought was really good as well. And you can Google search all of these, you'll find them very easily.
Okay, so like Vicki said, there's a lot of partner strategies out there. So what criteria did we use when I was picking which partner strategies I wanted to implement in this course? So my motto was keep it easy. I wanted to get buy-in. I wanted to find things that might interest them, feel easy to do, and create kind of a fun learning environment. And to be honest, I wanted to keep it easy on me as well. Like, I didn't have a ton of time, who does, to make all of these materials. And I wanted to be successful, for everybody involved. So the kits that Vicki was just describing from DTA, that played a big part in helping me decide what one I wanted to do, because she had this beautiful kit already easy for me to pull. And it came with a video, it came with some activities. So I kind of looked at the needs and what activities I thought would correlate with that target word. And I was looking at what I thought could be improved upon. And funny story, when I first started working there, before we even started thinking about this, I developed for all new staff a scavenger hunt, and it was to find a partner strategy. So I had them check off if they saw, somebody demonstrating really great expectant wait time, etc. And then they'd give it to me, and half the time it wouldn't be filled in. And I'd think to myself, oh man, if they didn't see that, that means it's not happening. Like, that is a problem. And that sort of got the ball rolling to get us here. But I wanted to find some things that they were maybe doing a little bit that I could tweak and get them better at, or that wasn't really happening at all, so that I could help them to kind of like understand why it's important so that they could implement it. So I kept the strategies interactive and I used more of a conversational model and I encouraged them to ask questions. I never went to them and said, like, you're not doing this. I just said, here's how we can approach it as a team. Here's how I can help you and how you can help your student. And I kind of just kept the word functional in my brain because I really wanted it to be useful and practical. And again, I wanted that buy-in, and you see the buy-in when you see that it's making a difference, right? When it's having an impact. So that was sort of what I kept doing every time I was thinking through which one to do next. That's kind of what was going on in the back of my brain. Okay. So for our core words, we based them off the Project Core 36 because they're high frequency. And then Vicki had kind of explained to me that they also consider the relevance to academic environments. And she kind of gave me the example of same, different, and how those are common academic concepts. And I liked that idea because I really wanted to make sure that we are a school after all, right? So academics is a big piece of it. And I wanted teachers to also feel included and feel like they could use those core words in their lessons. So I also really liked the Project Core First 36 because a lot of them are easy to navigate or they're just straight on that homepage of the kids' communication device. So right there, right off the bat, it was more successful. And, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm keep thinking, I got to keep it easy. So I actually, in the beginning, only really used words that were like right on the homepage and like mostly a one hit to get that success and that buy-in. And then when I bumped it up to 2 hits or even a 3 hit, all of a sudden people came running to me like, I don't know where the word is. Where's the word? And I was like, okay. It's there. It's just not on the home screen. So once they figured out and we got over that little 1 hit bump and they could find it, they started to really see how these words can kind of carry with them throughout the whole day. Okay. So the core words are frequency based, as we know, but there's no real research into like the order of acquisition, like where you're supposed to start. So these are some concepts that we talked about to help us pick which words we were going to use. So we looked at their daily routine. We looked at things that were motivating for them. We wanted easily observable outcomes. And one big thing for me was I really wanted to make sure we were looking at communicative functions so that we weren't like stuck in that requesting world. So I targeted 3 core words every other week, and they weren't necessarily like always related to one another. Like one week I picked same, different, and help. I did try to do like opposites because I thought maybe opposites would be easy to incorporate into academics. But I really wanted to make sure that when I was picking those, I was also giving them examples of how to use them in different communicative functions. I really didn't want us to get like stuck at all.
Okay, so there's a lot of different ways that we can train our staff, and Nicole's been talking about a very specific technique that we use, a strategy that we use, but we actually go about this in many ways, and I'm sure you all are too. You've either presented these or you've been a participant in full day workshops, monthly workshops, mini trainings. Professional learning communities are really big right now around us. Self-studies, on-demand, one-on-one or small team. And then we have also teach through embedded partner instructional supports within our routine, within our materials. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. A full day workshop, I think all of us have participated in full day workshops. I think we all used to think this is what we had to do to learn something. I'm not a big fan anymore, and we'll explain that a little bit. But basically, we're looking at large group attendance. It's typically in person, although certainly after COVID, we all learned how to do it remotely. It has to have multiple strategies. So we're doing lectures and case studies. We're trying to keep people awake and engaged in those full day workshops, which is one of the reasons that I think that they're a little bit challenging because it's hard on a presenter. We'll do make and takes. You can see this particular one. I was doing a make and take with the group. They tend to be around comprehensive topics because you have a lot of time to talk. So we do things around aided assessment, AAC assessment, embedded strategies, key partner strategy trainings. That our framework of learning is a full day training if we address that whole thing, and then materials planning and development. As I said, not my favorite because it's hard to keep people focused and engaged for that amount of time. We also have done these monthly workshops, so half-day workshops. Now, I did these last year for a couple of my districts. And honestly, the reason I did them is because the district asked for them. They were so used to that format that they asked for it. And actually, in one of my districts, the reason they wanted to do these half-day workshops, they had the people come in person to the half-day workshops. I presented remotely to them, but the administration wanted to watch and make sure everyone was participating. So I think that's a piece of it. Half day workshops, I think, are a little bit better because they're not as long, and you don't have to, your attention is not as long, and you're not dealing with so many different subjects. These are some of the topics that we address during our half day workshops: finding the why of AAC, introduction to aided language input, classroom engineering, lesson planning, and such. And our monthly workshops, it's these half day or full day. It's really, really important that these are interactive. So we did different things to keep them interactive for people. We did group completion of tools. So we would teach a tool and then we would work together on completing that tool. So whether it was a goals grid or we were doing a lesson plan, and then we would have the small groups come and present their work to the entire group. We use Nearpod. I love Nearpod. We can do those in the moment surveys, short answer responses. We can have people draw their ideas on screen. And then we do these. I love the little group idea boards. So people can all put in their own ideas. And we get so much more engagement with this because people see their names pop up, and we call their names and we talk to them about, what their input was. So those strategies are things that make it work when you're doing the longer involved trainings.
Okay, so next we're going to look at mini trainings. And these are in person, and this is the format I used. Because like Vicki just said, the longer trainings, you have to keep them engaged and keep their attention, but we just didn't have the time really to dedicate that amount. So I was like, we need mini trainings and we need to be pulling where we can, any of that like downtime that we have. So I'm going to walk you through how we did the mini trainings at my school. Okay. So on this slide, you're actually looking at the protocol, and this is in your handouts. And I'm going to walk you through how I structured the trainings. So the way I structured them was I did them 3 times a week, week 1. And then week 2, I did observation to assess application and generalization of skill. And I would just sort of pop in like not a very planned kind of way. And, full disclosure, initially I did try to schedule it. And I would actually like let the teacher know I was coming. And then when they're expecting you to come, it just changed the whole feel, right? Like they all were on their best behavior. And I was like, not that I don't want to see that you guys can turn it on when you need to, but I kind of want to know what happens as if I wasn't here. Like I want to know, like, I'm here if you have a question, but like pretend I'm not, right? And you'll see some data sheets in here as well. And those are what I used to kind of collect the data when I was doing those on kind of pop in generalization application of skill times. So the 3 trainings went like this. My first training was push in, and Vicki knows, because in the beginning I was really not wanting to do push in. I really wanted to have the interveners with me and be able to ask questions and not have to worry about their student. But unfortunately, we just didn't have enough equipment. So we didn't have every student's device when they left the school. So push in it was. And it ended up actually working like way better than I anticipated. I was really pleasantly surprised because with this format, the students were there. So they were actually passively learning and then oftentimes engaging in the activity that I was asking the staff to do. So the staff we'd be talking about, for example, greetings. And I'd say, okay, talk out loud about how you're thinking about where the greetings might be. Like, let the student hear your thought, right? So, where would greetings be? And then the student's kind of like looking over to see where greetings might be. And then they'll find a greeting and they'll say hi. And so many times the student would like immediately pick a greeting off the greetings page, right? To like participate. And I was like, oh, that was unexpected. And they'd say, what's up? And I'm like, yeah, what's up is a greeting. Exactly. So it gave the staff an opportunity to see where that word lives, but it also gave the student an opportunity to see where that word lives. Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they knew and they were showing them another option, right? So these were short and sweet. A push-in was like I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes max. And that's usually when I like had to really help some people. I wasn't looking to take away a lot of academic time from the teachers. I really just wanted to pop in, talk about the targets, where they live, help them find them, and then I'd go to the next classroom. The next training would be more of a lecture style. And I did that the next day. I did it before school started. We all met anyway. So I asked our admin if I could use one of the days to take that time and talk. And I'd kind of start with who remembers the targets that I just taught you yesterday. And in the beginning, I would have to remind them of the targets. But every time we did it, it got a little better and people got a little more comfortable. They'd shout them out. And then I'd say, do you remember where you find them in their device? And they would shout out like, what page they found them on. And then I'd give them an understanding of why I picked them and why they're important. And then I'd talk about different ways you can use them. And the teachers were present for this training, which I thought was really important because I wanted them to know the targets so that they could incorporate them into their academic time. And remember, I did try to pick targets, that had some academic component to them that would easily flow into their academics. And I was really lucky. I mean, Vicki knows we had some really fun teachers that got really into it. And one of our classes was kind of like in the middle of our school, and I would walk by and hear them and they would yell when they said the core word. They'd be like, and the different game we're going to play today. And I was like, I hear you. Good job. But what that also did was it cued the communication partner to say it on their device, right? And I thought that was a really good way to do it because it's hard to always remember to model when somebody else is talking, right? So by hearing that little auditory cue, oh, okay, that's the word I want to model. So the last part of the training, the third component, was application. And we had this like downtime after school when the students would leave, but the staff was still there. It was about 30 minutes of our time. And I like to think of it as bonus time because I could get them to focus, but don't forget it's the end of the day, right? So everybody's exhausted and like a little grumpy that I'm making them all come together. So I really use this time to do kind of review their lesson plan for a minute, but then we focused on partner strategies. I kept it upbeat. I tried to make it really interactive. If we were talking about descriptive teaching, we had our headbands on and we were like making it goofy and silly and fun. And we ended up, it was only scheduled for 30 minutes. Oftentimes we went longer than that. And this is like people waiting to go home, right? And you had like maybe your one person who was like checking their watch because, they wanted to go, but other people were sticking around like, I want to talk more about it. So that was really encouraging and really, really nice for me to see because I felt like I was getting that buy-in that I had worked so hard to get. So that's the first week. The second week, I did my pop-ins, and that was just to see how they were generalizing and applying that information. So it was less formal. I kind of popped in. I sort of made myself a checklist to make sure that I had my eyes on every single kind of team and group and child, and then kind of just did it casually throughout the week. It was not structured. Like I said, I tried to structure it too much. But then Vicki was just showing you some of the pages. So in that protocol, you'll see some data collection sheets, and those are what I use to collect my baseline data. There is.
Okay, let me back up for you, Nicole.
Sure.
I apologize. I'm following you along and I'm like, wait, I'm not getting this right for you. I apologize, guys.
Okay. You're okay. Okay, so we have that data collection sheet, and then that's our daily lesson plan. There's our data. Yep. And then the daily lesson plan is more direct training. So I actually filled out a good bit of this before giving it to them. I would select the words in the, or the like messages if we were doing the social messages. And I just went through and wrote them on there for them because it was easier than me like finding a pen for everybody to write it on there. I just went through, wrote it on there. Then when we met during lecture time, I would review the targets and we'd have some bonus words for those overachievers. And what I think started to happen is people would ask me for bonus words and people got really into it. Now, there was a lot of competitiveness happening at this school, which I like really fed into. But what I think was me and Vicki, when we were designing this and we brought it to our admin, she was like, this is so slow. Like, this is really slow. It's only 3 core words you're targeting every other week. And we were like, that's intentional. We want it to be digestible. And because we did it that way, people were coming to me asking for more. So it was really nice. Like I could see that people were like, I can do this. Maybe I can do a little bit more. So that was really nice to see. So then we had the self reflection right there. You'll see the self reflection strategy. I had them do that during their own time. Things like find a friend and parents share. So show where the word is on your device and find it on the other person's device. I did a volunteer. I would ask a volunteer during our morning sessions to come stand up and just say where they found the word. And we had a pretty gregarious group, so somebody would always volunteer. And then I did a spotlight. So I would highlight something really cool that I saw happen in the last day or two, just to kind of give everybody a moment. I thought that was really important. So a bonus of all of this that I don't think we actually planned for, but that came out of it was all of a sudden I'd hear like chatter in the background of like, well, how do you find that word on Pod? Or how do you find it on TD Snap? Or like, where is it on Lamp Words for Life? So like, even though their child only used that one communication tool, they were curious about like how the other guy used it and how they found the word. So it started creating a lot of curiosity. You'd hear all of this interest. And then what that actually did was then if somebody was out, they didn't come to school that day, like a pair intervener, somebody else could jump in and be like, I know where the core words are. I know where the targets are, right? So that was really nice to see. And then those daily activity prompts that you'll see down there, the single words and messages, I gave them the pathways to make it easy. Then they would practice with a little more navigation. And then I actually did sentence starters. Like I'm telling you, I tried to make this as easy as possible, but I always implemented different communication functions. So it was never just always requesting. We added in questions, we did comments, we did all the different things so that we didn't just get stuck in that one kind of communication function that's so easy to get stuck in.
I mean, I think one of the things that's really important to think about this is that you see a big difference between those full day workshops and half day workshops and then getting into these mini trainings. And I think the difference is just like in our schools. I mean, when we are in classrooms, there's a huge difference between teaching 36 people at a time in a big classroom and that small group instruction. And that's not just for kids, that's for adults too, right? It is easier to be individualized about the instruction when we bring it down into something that is short, sweet, digestible, and people have an opportunity to interact. Now, while Nicole was working on doing this mini trainings in person, we were working on our end doing these mini trainings remotely. So we are still continuing to do this. So we did this in a small manner with just one school district last year. This year we are in, I think we're doing it in 4 different school districts. And what we do is we're not doing, obviously we can't do what Nicole did where it's at that detail because we're not there all the time, but we do a 30-minute session. We target around a particular tool. So we found that if people have something concrete to complete during the session, it makes it stick a little bit better for them. So we teach the tool and then we teach the concepts around the tool itself. Despite the fact that we're not teaching a tool today, I think that strategy really works for people really well. So we'll pick a tool like the Classroom Communication Goals Grid or a lesson planning tool. We teach how to use it, and then we send them on their way. These sessions are short and sweet. They're 30 to 45 minutes on average. We send everybody off. About a week later, we send an email that has we call it a resource roundup, where all of the resources that we talked about the week before are included in the email with links so people can get out to the things that were asked that we have shared with them. And then we also give them a small assignment. So the assignment might be complete the tool that we gave you last time. Usually that's what it is. And then reply all to this email. So everyone has to reply to the same email when they complete the activity to come back in and share the tool that they completed. So that's worked out really nice. We have done and we've come back and reviewed at the next AAC, the mini training. If we are allowed time, we'll come back and do a review for that. So I think of all of the different trainings that we've offered, I think I'm probably the biggest fan of these minis. I think they work exceedingly well. Some of the topics that we taught, how to choose words and messages, using a routine planner poster. That's what you see in this picture. Just very simple lesson planning to make sure that we're using some of those core word targets and we're using our communication systems, assessing and choosing IEP goals. It's really funny, but you start getting around March and everybody is very interested in how to write IEP goals. So that's a real popular one. Professional learning communities are another strategy that I think also works brilliantly. And I would say it comes in as a close second to me to the AAC mini trainings. Professional learning communities, I took this quote from somebody that knows more about it than I do. But basically it's that it's educators, teachers or therapists coming together to work collaboratively to solve a problem. So everyone is expected to participate in bringing something to the table in the discussion and learning. So we do have districts that will we have a training website, and their training website has close to 100 different little video trainings, kind of like speechpathology.com, except a lot smaller and really just focused on AAC. So, but they'll take those trainings and as a team in their professional learning community meetings, they'll watch a training. We give them a set of guiding questions that they can ask and discuss together. And then we're not involved at all. We just give them the materials and they teach themselves. I think that is fantastic. I mean, I think it's worked really, really well. They are learning from each other. And then they have somebody to go to talk about when they're having challenges. The only negative to this was we did have some feedback that people were looking for a little bit of expert guidance from us at times. So that's the piece that's missing. But I think that we still haven't quite solved that problem, but I believe we're probably going to be doing a little bit of dropping in to some of those PLC meetings. Here's just an example of one of our, you can also have collaborative learning teams. So this is one of our district's Bartow County schools in Georgia. They did all of their collaborative learning teams remotely, and they had 4 critical questions to answer last year. What do we want the students to know? How will we know they know it? What do we do when they know it? And what do we do if they don't know it? When they first came to us, they said, well, this is what we're supposed to be working on. We don't have time to do communication. And I was like, whoa. Take a look at those questions that you asked. Question number 2, how will we know they know it, is absolutely a communication question, right? The way we will know they know it is because they're able to communicate well. So that was really important. And question 4, what do we do if they don't know it? AAC, anyone? Probably that's going to be one of the components of the answer. We can do self-study. Self-study, we do those trainings. You can do self-study DTA schools. We do have our training program, but this is not a DTA schools advertisement. You can do self-study everywhere. During COVID, I think all of the collective AAC brains in the world started making videos that you can watch. There are so many trainings out there. You can go on YouTube and look at trainings. I mentioned AAC in the cloud when we were getting started. AAC in the cloud has years of completely free AAC focused trainings that you can go watch on YouTube that are very, very high quality. So there's lots of ways that you can do self-studies.
And just to go back to the self-study really quickly, something that we offered on Vicki's suggestion was micro-credentialing. So after they completed a training with me, I actually gave them a certificate that showed they completed the training if they were able to answer the questions. And then we created them an account so they could log on to Vicki's website and do their own training, like a self-study, if they were interested in it. And I thought that really was a nice way for them to go to their annual review, show admin all the work that they put into their training and say, I am a strong communication partner and look at all of these things I've done to educate myself. So Vicki had made that suggestion. And I think when you get something for doing all the training and you can then bring it to your admin, it just is a really nice way for admin to recognize it. So I just wanted
We
to
have
add that too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that is really motivating. We have teachers that are using some of this self-study as part of their teacher annual goals. We call them
Yeah.
TEKS here in Georgia. They'll use them for their annual goals, and they use the certificates that they receive to prove that they did the trainings. And some of the different trainings that you can access online will give certificate as well. The SGD manufacturers have trainings. A lot of them have trainings that you can get certificates from. AAC in the Cloud has trainings you can get certificates from. So there's lots of options out there.
Yeah. Okay.
Oops.
So, oh, thank you. So I mentioned that we had a group of pretty competitive people. So the self-study application became more of like a challenge for them, which was really fun because I feel like a healthy dose of competition is okay, right? So one of the things we did was call out a coworker. So if you heard or saw them modeling the target word or phrase, you'd call them out and then you would run and put your name on the whiteboard that was like in our gym. And it became sort of almost like too intense. Like people were like running into each other. I was like, guys, I this is too much. I didn't mean it to make it this competitive, but it wasn't even to get their own win. They were calling out coworkers, right? Like I loved that. It was really motivating. And then the person who got the most tally marks, I had worked with admin, and I was like, I need people to buy into this, and I need to give them like something exciting. And she let me actually give them the ability to leave early on a Friday of their choosing, like gold. People were like, yes, I want to leave. I want to get the heck out of here on Friday. So that motivated them on top of just like helping their student. We use those little finger counters, and those were just like fun to wear, but also really easy. So you would count how many times you modeled throughout the day. And at the end of the day, we'd all come together, and whoever had the highest number would win like a gift card to Chick-fil-A, which in Georgia is a very big deal. The 10-minute try it, we'd ask them to find 10 minutes in their day that they could work with the student and just try it in a concentrated time. Like really say, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes, kind of time block it and practice. And I tried to find things that were like real applications, like a lot of those social messages. Find the first 10 minutes of school and just practice your greetings, right? So just like really narrowing in on that. We also had a component of self-study that you see here where they would answer questions related to the challenges, such as like, how did it feel completing last week's challenge? How do you feel it went? And then oftentimes I'd ask them to pass these papers back into me just so I could see it and like have that. And they would write like one word on that paper. And I'd be like, oh man, like that doesn't feel like they really care. But then we'd meet in one of the 3 times we're all together, we would talk, and they would talk forever. They just wrote the one word, but we would have a full discussion about how it felt. Why did it feel a little awkward? Was it embarrassing that you didn't know where that word was? We'd kind of piece it and dice it and do all the things and talk about it. And it was just a really nice time to kind of be vulnerable and talk through some of the challenges.
Um, there was a little question that just as a quick answer.
Yeah.
Shelley was asking who the audience is for our trainings. And typically the audience for us is going to be SLPs. It'll be the classroom teachers. It'll be the paraprofessionals. In the school that Nicole was in, they had interveners, so they were the people that we were doing the work with. So it really can be anybody that's working with the student. I think it's in particular, I think the paraprofessionals or paraeducators are left out a lot of times. Those minis can be very helpful for them as well. Okay, we
I
have
was
six,
just going to
six
say
minutes
it.
left. So
I
we're
know.
going to go kind of quickly through the rest. I mean, I think we can do that without any problem.
Okay. So
Nicole?
the on-demand one-on-one or small team trainings, the thing I want to kind of highlight here is that you can have office hours. So that's a really nice way to just say, I'm available if you have a question. I initially scheduled them, and then I was like, I don't need to be this rigid. Can you tell I'm a fairly type A person? I backed off and I was like, if you have a question, just come in. Classroom drop-ins during that second week of observation was a great time for them to ask me questions. What ended up happening most times is they would tell me all the cool things that they saw. They'd be like, so and so said a greeting on her own today, and we would like have a big party and a celebration. That's like tended to be what happened when I did a classroom drop-in. And then the catch me in the hallway meetings, it's always on your way to the bathroom, but it's a really nice time. I would stop and let them tell me whatever was going on or ask me a question because I really wanted to know it was valuable. But oftentimes, again, it was just like a celebration of like, so-and-so did blah, blah, blah. And they were all excited to tell me that they couldn't wait until after I went to the bathroom. Okay. Trying to speed it up.
Another little strategy that we use, and this is within our materials, we sneak AAC into the materials. So we'll actually embed those little hints and tips for the teachers into the material that they're instructing the students with. So just as an example, we'll add that prompt directly onto the page of the book. So we have these core vocabulary books. Totally swipe this idea from Karen Erickson and the Project Core crowd. But we put these little partner prompts and we tell the partners what to say. Say this and point to this. We give them little information at the beginning of the book, just some little reminders of things that you do. Some of the activities, if we're going to play a seek and find or a Where's Waldo kind of thing with our kids, why don't we do that on communication devices? So we have a Where Are My Words as part of our activity sets that we're finding it on Word Power screenshots, and we're finding it on TD Snap screenshots, and we're finding it on Proloquo screenshots. And it doesn't even matter if it's the child's device or not. They're still getting that practice of looking at the images. They're all kind of similar, right? Looking at those images and starting to recognize some of the similar components to that. That's been a pretty big hit. And the other thing is that people that are a little reluctant or scared don't even know you're doing it. We're just slipping it in there on them.
Okay, so for proof of concept, we're looking at the outcomes, and a lot of these were visible during my sessions. I would see them putting their hands on devices, right? So that's a visible proof of concept right there, right? I even had admin come to me and say things like, so-and-so is using their student's device a lot more lately. Like, that's huge. We also did staff surveys to better understand how they felt like they were taking in the information. And then we used the device data to get some measurement. So we wanted to be able to see. So we are going to show you some of that data. And we're going to look at our initial trends. And to do that, we used speech generating device data and then the team surveys. So on the left side is our device data, and on the right side is our team surveys. And we used data gathered from the SGDs to determine any changes in the students' use of the targeted words and messages after the partner trainings. And we wanted to see if there was a change in the amount of the communication around these specific targets. And the protocol introduced two new targets every 2 weeks. So that's how we measured the data on a biweekly system. And as you can see, a lot of those social messages were used a lot, which was really, kind of a good thing that we started at that point. Okay. We used surveys to get a better understanding of how the staff perceived the training and the difficulty or ease of modeling. And we did a scale of 1 to 100. And what we found was that, interestingly, needs, so one of our social messages, was actually one of the more difficult, and they rated it difficult when I finally got to talk to them, because in those moments where the child needs something, often are high stress. So they felt like, well, I can't just whip out the communication device when they need to use the bathroom and I'm running to the bathroom. So we talked about how you could go around it and how you don't have to pull it out. You don't have to do all of that. But maybe when you come back, you can say, oh, you needed to use the bathroom. Here's how you could tell me. And you can use that moment after to talk about it.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
We also did surveys at the end of the year just to all of our districts and asking them how they like to receive information. So this was the result of our end of the year survey last year. And I thought it was kind of interesting as you're trying to decide how people are going to hear you. People really loved in-person visits, but they also thought emails were equally helpful. I think that's because nobody has time, right? But then I thought the short videos, and when we say short, we mean like 2 minutes. Short videos and 1 hour workshops were also were pretty popular. You will note that all day workshops were not so popular, and half day workshops were not as popular either. Okay, so quick tips. You want to make sure that you're getting administrative support when you're implementing any kind of adult training plan for the staff. You want to make sure that the teams have time for training. You want to make sure that we are doing consensus building at all times. We're checking in to make sure everybody's in agreement about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then frankly, we need monetary support. We need to be able to give reinforcers to the teachers, not the kids, reinforcers to the teachers. We need those little fun tools to use. Paid time off, being able to leave 15 minutes early is a huge reward for people.
Okay, next steps. Teresa, this is going to answer your question. So we use the devices. We collected data through the devices. But one of the next steps, if we could improve, is we talked about when you're collecting data from the devices, you can't actually parse out who's touching the device, right? Or who's accessing the device, whether it's the communication partner or the student, the user. So we talked about maybe having a modeling device so that we could see the differences in that data. And then we wanted to continue to simplify targeted skills, making it small and digestible, and embed more partner prompts so that it's obvious when to model, like what Vicki was showing us with that book or a game. Frequent check-ins for self-reflection. I think we did our survey at the end and maybe could have done it a little bit sooner. Just kind of getting a feel of how it's going before we continued. And then pre and post observation data collection of partner practices, something as simple as a checklist to see what strategies they are and are not using so we can shape our training.
I think the most important thing about all of this is just that as we're doing teacher training, for us to be teacher training and SLP training, as we're training the other people around our students, that we're being intentional and thoughtful about what we're doing, and we're checking to make sure that it works. I think that's the main thing. It's not sort of fly-by training, but we actually really need to be intentional about teaching the adults just like we do our students. Now, in your handout, you'll see a list of some of the resources that we talked about today. I would recommend you go take a look at those. But Nicole and I are really excited to be able to see you all today. I think it looks like it is 6:02, so I apologize. It looks like we've hit all of the chat discussions though, so that was good. But I really appreciate your time with us today. Thanks, everyone.